No, we'll just hold on, Councillor Walker, but cool. Thank you. Cool. Where are we? Who do we have? Cool. Cool. So, Denise, McLean, Paul, if you introduce yourselves as you go, but we've got the scoping report for adaptive management of too much water, which is a very good name.
Kia ora koutou, Pomere Lloyd Takuingoa. I'll introduce Denise O'Shaughnessy and McLean Grindal, and also Sarah Leclerc, who's worked in developing this scoping report. And that was developed in response to a resolution from the Environment and Community Committee, excuse me, in the previous term. Effectively, you're being asked to commission this piece of work. So what is it? What we're proposing is a program of work to develop an adaptive management policy. We use the title very much plain English, about too much water. So that's water as a result of flooding, coastal inundation, and then as a result of that, coastal erosion. This is very much intertwined with the Climate Action Plan that you adopted earlier on in the session. It is informed by a number of good practice examples. So in terms of that, we've drawn from the international realm with the Sendai framework. We've got the New Zealand Coastal Management Statement, another important document from the Ministry for Environment about preparing for coastal change. And there's also good practice from colleagues in and around the Hawke's Bay who've developed a long-term strategy that goes out to 2000 and, sorry, I'll start again, 2120, so 100-year strategy. And so you can see that that has informed the thinking that we're bringing to you today. And in terms of the driver for this work, it's really, there are a number of incidences where there are issues in terms of too much water that are occurring across the region. The evidence is indicating that that is only going to get worse over time. And when these incidences arise, then we have issues in terms about roles and responsibilities, and that raises a whole series of questions. So what we're proposing is a series of 4 work streams that will culminate in the development of some interim principles, a draft discussion document which will then stimulate engagement with local boards and the community, and then final policy. If I can anticipate some questions, it might be useful just in terms of managing time. So statement in terms of paragraph 79 that talks about financial implications. So the development of this work will involve 2 full-time equivalents, and it will be done so within existing budgets and baselines. Just to confirm that the process in which engaging with local boards conforms to the governance review process in terms of, so we're looking at a 2-stage engagement with local boards. And then just highlight, and I know that Councillor Dalton had some questions which I'll just address now. So we have, in developing the scoping document, talked to mana whenua groups. There is clear response from mana whenua that this is an issue of significance to them. It relates to sites of significance, also to marae, urupa, and also sites involving cultural practices as well, and whether that's in terms of resource gathering and harvesting and those sorts of things. So that was explicit feedback that we received, in particular from Ngāti Tiata as well as Te Kaurawa Amaki. And in terms of developing the policy over the course of the next year, what we're looking at is quite an in-depth engagement with mana whenua groups, and that will be throughout the process, and as well as explicit engagement once we have that discussion document and also the draft document. And in particular, that will be also informed by, there are a number of existing iwi management plans, so as part of that we will then have face-to-face discussions and engage in in dialogue with mana whenua groups as they wish to engage in the process. And lastly, just having some discussions with Member Wilcox, there's a proposal that we also include another work stream which talks specifically about Māori outcomes. So as I've described, and in terms of the initial how we conceived of those 4 work streams and the feedback we received from mana whenua groups was that certainly the risk is an area that mana whenua has expressed an interest in terms of that was important to them, and that's risk to marae, sites of significance and the others, and certainly also the knowledge work stream looking at working in close collaboration with mana whenua in that regard, as well as the social change. But that addition is supported by staff as well, so happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Paul. And for those online who may not be able to see the screen, the resolutions are the same, but there is the additional E, which says, note that Māori outcomes to the ongoing workstream will consider kōrero from marae, papakainga, sites of significance to mana whenua and Māori enterprises, and that came from Member Wilcox to be added in and is supported by staff. So just in case you can't see that, everything else is the same in the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
Cool. Question from Councillor Walker.
If you're happy, I'll just make my statement at the same time, just to expedite things.
I'll just get questions from Deputy Mayor and Councillor Simpson first. That's the only 2. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chairman. The coastal compartment management plans, have they been completed? No. So they were started...
Through the Chair.
Yeah.
We've been talking to Environmental Technical Services who are bringing those forward. The first pilot is due to be consulted on in later this year, and we will be making sure that we align the work that we're doing with this with the work that's been done by the Coast Group for the coastal compartment management plans.
When were they started, those coastal plans? 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think the groundwork and the research work that they required was started then. I believe that the first pilot is happening this year.
And the Natural Hazards Risk Management Action Plan, is that completed?
No. That, I think, work is happening at the moment they were under consultation. They brought it to committee last August, I believe, for further consultation. And a lot of that work is integrated within the Auckland Climate Plan and within the LTP climate lane to bring those actions forward. But I think that there's work ongoing with that. And once again, we've been talking to staff members there to make sure that the work we're doing supports and is aligned with that piece of work as well.
So if I went and spoke to Healthy Waters or Rod Sheridan, they'd be able to give me a pretty extensive list of what needs to be done, where and how, I would suspect. Would that be a fair comment?
What needs to be done in terms of?
Protecting these areas, mitigations, systems put in place to actually reduce the risks around flooding, coastal inundation and so forth.
We have a meeting on Thursday with the flooding group from Healthy Waters, and once again we've been talking extensively with Healthy Waters about what is required, what they already know, and what policy they would embrace to sit behind that.
Thank you. And the pilot is in September for Whangaparoa for the coastal compartment management plans. That's the first one, as far as I know. Yeah. Councillor Simpson.
I'm getting a bit nervous, actually, having spoken to listen to the Deputy Mayor. The two staff that you're going to put against this, they're already employed, aren't they? They're all part of your team? These are not new people, right?
So through the chair, that was a full-time equivalent, so it will be a combination of pieces of time of existing staff members. So there won't be 2 specific staff members, it's a combination of a range of people that will
Everyone will do
contribute
a
to the
bit.
project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Casey.
I've got 2 questions. The first one is the proposed plan seeks to mitigate risks against high-risk populations such as people on low income, people with disabilities and new migrants. The good news is that the 6 demographic advisory panels should be in place by August, so you would have their input by December when you come to have the final policy document. That was not a question, that was a statement. My question is, remember animals and livestock as part of this plan, because they have been found in every emergency to be left behind. So I think the emergency management has now got them central to their plans, so just to make sure that you keep mentioning it. Some people don't want to leave their house if you're not taking their animal.
Cool. Thank you. Yep. Councillor Darby, is this a question or a speaking?
And just carrying on from the earlier point I was discussing about wetlands. Wetlands actually take the energy out of water and can slow that supply of water down. So I'm just interested in your work here, how we start to look at those natural systems that actually take the energy out of water to slow water so that we don't get too much water. Is this work likely to be exploring all of that?
So through the chair, that the work stream that looks at interventions can sort of contribute to that, but I suspect the question also relates to quite a specific sort of asset type response, and the nature of this policy will be much broader than that. So it will be the impact across the environment as well as people in terms of the economy and social and cultural practices as well. So it's a people-driven strategy, and then it supports a range of other asset-driven strategies that are in the process of development.
Okay.
Thank you. Now speaking turns Councillor Walker.
I just want to speak to this. I'm very supportive of this. Just picking up from Paul's comment, essentially this is about a process, and it's a co-designed, collaborative, bottom-up process that involves the community. So, and it doesn't necessarily second-guess answers. It's adaptive. That's the basis of it. So we need to actually do this. We need to do it as quickly as we can. In respect of the question that Councillor Simpson raised, which was going to finance, this approach saves a whole bundle of money. Instead of the millions of dollars that we've effectively wasted at Orewa, which had one part of council battling another part and actually hasn't generated a solution, it hasn't generated a long-term solution in terms of the coastal processes. This process, because it's collaborative, it can engage the community, can actually generate solutions, and they're very cost effective. So I would hope that we pick up from other councils. Bay of Plenty, for example, has adopted this. They've actually applied it. So I would hope that we look at where other councils are at in terms of testing the process to make sure it's fit for purpose, and perhaps even customising some test cases so we make sure that we've got the thing right. And I would just make the observation around the adaptive nature of it. Climate change and sea level rise is going to be coming and hitting us fast. It's accelerating. We're seeing that in storms. These things are going to multiply, and we need this sooner rather than later. It is about the only way that we can actually apply a customised approach around the coastline, because you've actually got to involve the people everywhere. They are part of the solution. So this enables us to do that. And frankly, I think it has merit to apply across council. The adaptive approach has merit in many other areas, and I'm sure Barry Potter's picked up on that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's not often I speak against something that the staff have put forward, but in this case I feel I have to. 2017 we had the Tasman Tempest. We started the coastal compartment management plans a year before that. That Tasman Tempest destroyed a lot of coastline, a lot of infrastructure that was put there. The work was done, or not done. It has been done in some places. We know from other areas, Hawke's Bay, we know from the West Coast, we know from what's happening in Tauranga what the solutions are. Yes, Councillor Walker is absolutely right. We need to involve our communities. That should have started in 2017. and that needs to be implemented. Now, I don't believe we need to do this whole new adaptive approach or planning cycles with another theoretical exercise. We actually need to start doing stuff. Enough of the paralysis by analysis. Let's just talk to communities and find what is the best thing to put in to solve this situation. Is it a rock remitment? Is it planting? Is it whatever? Or is it just abandonment? But I think we've had enough of this endless planning cycles. Anticipate future events. Give it a rest. How can you do that? You've got no idea what's coming. No one does. And the whole thing to me is just bureaucracy repeating itself on work that should have been completed already. And I won't be supporting it. Happy to be in the minority too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Jessie Simpson.
Okay, I've seconded this, but the Deputy Mayor has a good point. So, Mr Chairman, I'd like to try and find a compromise. I don't know what everybody else thinks. But, you know, we have started work that hasn't been completed, and these guys are meeting with that team after this has been approved, and I don't know that that's right. So I support what this work wants to do, and I support, and I'm sure the Deputy Mayor does. Yeah. But actually, the bit that's missing in between is the work that's already started and where we've got to before we figure out where we need to go. So to that end, I'm just interested in the rest of you around the table, whether we could, dare I say it, defer this for a month, because I think, and I don't want to hold anything up, you know, I've seconded it, but you need to give us confidence that you've spoken to Healthy Waters, we know where they're at, we know what the gaps are, yep. And by approving this, we know where to go. So I say that giving you a month's notice, you know, if that's acceptable, because to reinvent the wheel is not good value for money. I really want this work to happen, and I've seconded it because I do want it to happen. But you have to know what you've already got done so you don't start the whole process again.
Is there a response to that? Because I see people kind of
this is
ready to...
Yeah, this is incorrect. Could we just have a response to... The purpose, in my understanding, is because we don't have these policies in place, and we keep making decisions, expensive ones, on the hoof because we don't have this in place. So... if you could just have a response.
Through the chair, we wouldn't want to give the impression that we hadn't been working across the organisation. So we'd be engaging with Healthy Waters, with engineering and technical services through the development of the scoping report and other areas, which I may have forgotten. And they are supportive of the policy work. They see as an important part of the work that they're doing, that it's complementary to that. So the workshop that Sarah referred to is a continuation of the discussions that have already been going on over the last several months to develop this report.
It's a shame that no one approached me about this, and then we could have discussed it before. You know. Yeah, but my understanding is that this work is happening because we do not have these policies in place as an organisation. Jacques, did you have something to add?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we're talking past each other. If you look at paragraphs 53, 54, 55, I think that's the crux of what we are talking about. Yes, there are many plans. Healthy Waters has got a whole bunch. INES has got a whole bunch. The chief engineer's got a whole bunch. That's part of the issue. Everybody is doing stuff. This is not about what the solutions are. This is the policy that we put in place, and what it comes down to in the end is about risk and liability. Council has no policy on when it takes the risks and when it will and will not be liable. That's what this is about. That is, and within that context, that the plans, for example, that the Deputy Mayor raised, that they get implemented. Without that, it is not clear where that risk and liability sits. That's what this is about.
Councillor Cooper?
I mean, I think we faced this after the Tasman tempest. We had no policy for what we did with houses that were flooded and risk of life, and we had to kind of make it up as we went along. And I think for me, this can pull all the work streams together and actually justify whether we do things or not. At the moment, we've got no framework to justify or to send us ahead. And I think if we've got that, you can say we're doing this because of this, or we're not doing it because of this policy. And I think that gives us the guidance. I think we've kind of come at it a bit backwards, but we're now remediating that. That's how I see this. And I also think we have to have policies on risk. We've got massive costs coming towards us and no one knows who should pay. And we're always the last man standing. So we need to really clearly define what we are liable for and not. So that's why I support this, though I do respect Deputy Mayor's views, because we've got to get on with the stuff that almost falls out of this, but it's already going and we need to get on with it.
This has got timeframes.
Cool. Sorry, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do support this work, and I support it thinking back to Seaview Road in Piha, which is in Linda and I's ward. And that provides a taster for what might come in many parts of our city and indeed our country in the next few decades and beyond. What we hear repeatedly is, according to the data and the projections, we are heading towards situations where people's homes will be washed out in greater number. They'll fall off cliff faces, all sorts of apocalyptic, horrible things. And I think it is very important, in particular, work stream 2, I want to point everyone's attention to that one. Risk and liability. I think that is the most important there for me. Because when ratepayers' homes fall into the ocean or get washed out, they can come to us and say, well, you shouldn't let us build in a floodplain. We think that you're liable. Council's traditionally seen as the last man standing in these kind of situations. Residents will say this, and we can point to central government, who can point the finger right back again. The insurance company are well ahead of us in this. They have been informed in reports in 2018 and 2019 indicating multi-billion-dollar risks across the country. And so when they know this kind of stuff, they would be very reluctant to insure these homes. And so we're heading towards a risk and liability time bomb potentially, and we've got to get plans in place immediately to try and address these difficult questions. NIWA's climate data has been published recently, I saw in Newsroom, and it's shown unequivocally that we will have more weather extremes. We've had droughts the last couple of years, we've also had storms, and as the data progresses, we're going to have longer and deeper droughts followed by massive, massive storms. And this is going to cause huge issues for our communities. And so we've got to get plans in place immediately to sort this out. So I'm hugely in favour of this, and it will impact hugely in my ward and across Auckland. Thank you.
Thank you. And largely last one, Member Wilcox.
Chair, look, I must have been asleep when I put forward this kaupapa. In its context, it should have been the ongoing work streams will integrate corridor, not consider corridor. We'll integrate, similar to what we've done with the Taurukea kaupapa, and it should be ongoing work streams, because there's the work streams up there, eh?
Yep.
So.
And that's fine with the mover and seconder.
Absolutely. That gives the extra weight to Bill. To the Deputy Mayor's
Yes, thank you. I largely wanted to say what Councillor Henderson was saying. This has come to actually Pippa and I about 3 times now before the committee to put a delay in. This committee is only every 2 months. The work needs to be done because we don't have clear policy on who is responsible when and for what. And it does mean that we have been making ad hoc decisions, not just on public but also private. When you think of New Lynn, Piha, other issues like that. Right now we're getting questions about houses on a cliff in Browns Bay that are privately built on private land, but the cliff is slipping away onto public land. So this is what this is enabling. Thank you. And we will. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Those against?
Aye, noted, please.
And Deputy Mayor would like his name recorded. Thank you very much.